Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Graphio12, also known as Shubham Mishra. So today I'll be talking about the Python standard library. So when I was learning Python, I started from a book called Think Python: How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. So it was an amazing book to start with, and after that I felt the need that lot more exploring has to be done into the Python standard library. I am a learner too, and I hope if I make some mistakes, you would be there to correct it. And so let's learn Python together. It's a great language with a very great standard library. So what I plan to do is that I will be posting videos every week on the Python standard library. And today, let's start with a very well-known module known as the collections. So, what are collections? Collections are high performance containers, or better known to the algorithms and data structures people as the data structures. So, there are very famous containers in other languages like C++ has a huge set of containers in their STL or the standard template library. Similarly, Java has their collections framework. Uh, Python has its own too. And let's see what are its components and features. So there are many data structures available in the Python standard library. The exhaustive list is here. So there is name tuple, deck, chain map, counter, order dict, default dict, user list, user string, etc. So the the question that I get is why use collections? Because we already have lists, tuples, and strings and dicts. Aren't they enough? So no, they might not be enough. Like there are some operations that are very useful and very efficiently done in lists or dicts or tuples, but much more enhancements are required in practicality in implementing algorithms that these containers provide. And you must also ask that why these are not part of the core Python module, because these are not part of the part of core Python because it is much less used and much has a much smaller niche. um, yeah. So in this video we'll be taking a look into uh, three of the modules. I'm sorry, three of the collections. These are the deck, the default dict, and the counter. I'll be coding along with the slides. So let's start with the deck. Deck is nothing but a double-ended queue. So the people who are familiar with data structures should know what is a double-ended queue. For those who don't, I will just give an example. Uh, Firstly, suppose you are standing in a counter for buying your say railway tickets. That is actually a queue. The people who arrived first would get the ticket first, and the people who arrived the last would get the ticket last. So this is sort of people who gets in first also gets out first. So it's a first in first out data structure, or FIFO for short. And suppose while you clean your dishes, you stack them up one against the one above the other, and so uh, the thing that you have stacked on top is usually the last thing, and you cannot pick something which is at the bottom before picking up something which is at the top. So you the order in which you pick up things from the stack is just the reverse order in which you put them. That is, the last item is the first one to get out. So this is known as the last in first out or first in last out process, or LIFO in short, last in first out. And what is a double-ended queue? A double-ended queue is an amalgamation of both. So uh, uh, a double-ended queue allows for both FIFO structure and LIFO structure. In a railway queue, what happens? People enter from one end only and get out from the other end. But in a double-ended queue, people can get in from behind and also from front, and also can get out in both ways. So this is the both ways queue, also known as the double-ended queue. So the usual operations that are present in a double-ended queue are push and pop, and also from both directions basically. So here you can see it is the here you can see a pictorial representation of queue. So the four main methods that are present in the deck are append, which is adding at the last, as you may know from the list operation, and pop, which is removing from the last. And if you want to add data from the beginning, then you have append left, and if you want to remove data from the beginning, then you have pop left. So you might ask that these things can be done using a list also, right? So what's the difference? So the way in which list is implemented internally in Python, it allows for fast removal of data from the end. That is, append and pop are order 1 or constant time operations. But if you want to add data at the beginning of the array or the list, then what you have to do is you put the data in at the 0th element, and then you shift all the other elements to the right by one step. So what is happening is that this thing takes time which is proportional to the number of elements in the array, and so it's an order of n operation. But the push pop in both directions from a deck is order 1 operation, so this becomes highly scalable. So let's take a look at how we use it in code. So I will open the Python interpreter. So let's import it first. So see, so from collections I have imported deck. Let's declare or initialize a deck. I'm terrible with my naming, so I will just call it a queue. So this is one of the methods in which you can initialize a deck. So initially this is an empty deck. Now we need to insert data. So I will insert from the right end. Basically there is nothing here, so right and left hand makes no sense. So I'll just append one, let's append few more, 2, 3, 4. So if you just see queue now, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you are using a deck as a stack, then what you'll do, you'll just push and pop use the push and pop operations. That is, you will append from the right and also pop from the right. So if you just do a queue dot pop, so the data that is removed is 4, and again if you just pop, the data that is removed is 3. So it is actually picking elements from the end. Now if you just use pop left, what it will do, it will do the usual dequeue operation of a queue. That is, it will pop data from the left end. So the data at the left end is 1, so it will pop hopefully the value 1. Yeah, so it did that. Okay. Now the only data left is 2. Another useful feature of the deck is that you can specify the size of the queue. So you can initialize deck as follows. You can also pass in initial list at the beginning, and you can also specify a maximum length. I'm going to give it a length of 4. So it's a deck now which has a max length of 4. See what happens when I try to append. So if I try to append from the left, I would do append left. So I would append say 6. Now the elements of the queue would be basically 6, 1, 2, 4, as you can see. Now try to append from say right. Say I want to append 10. Notice that our initially we declared the queue to be of length 4. So what, yeah, it was with length 4 only, but then also it took an append operation. It did not throw an error. What happened is it appended from the right, and it popped out the value that was at the left because of the overflow. So now 1 is gone. Sorry, so the 6 that was there was gone. So this is the max length feature of deck. Another handy feature in the deck is that you can rotate the elements. So you can just do rotate 2. So what will happen if I do a rotate 2? Let's see. So what happened is that each element moved to 2 places to the right, or clockwise direction if you may. So one moved to the second index, 2 moved to the third index, fourth moved to the first index as it circled back, and 10 moved to the first index basically. So this is the rotate operation, and if you give a negative index to rotate, then it will just rotate to the opposite direction, and this gives back the original queue that we had. So let's go back to the slides. Yeah, so covered this. And so what are the uses of a queue? So the queue is used in the breadth first search algorithm. So if there so it is an algorithm in the graph theory to visit all the nodes in the graph starting from a node. So it is used and used there, and there is a something called a dispatcher or scheduler that you also uses the queue. What a dispatcher is, like, say you have a service in the web uh, that keeps on giving jobs, right? Like say fetching a page or running a service up time to time, and there are worker processes that consume these jobs and do as has been instructed. So how will you ensure the ordering of the jobs, and how will you orchestrate this in a straightforward way? The way to do is you use a queue, and like you put in jobs in a queue, and basically append them or enqueue them. And what the worker processes will do is, like, they will fetch these jobs from the queue and process them. And one of the very useful features of a deck is that it is thread safe and thread safe. So you can use multiple threads to consume the job simultaneously without the problem of race conditions. Okay, so let's move on. The next thing on our plate is called default dict. So we all know about dicts, right? So what are dicts? Dicts are implementations of hash tables, right? Is it only just a hash table? No, there is more to it than just being a hash table, than just being a traditional hash table. If you are interested, I will post a link in the description about a very nice talk given by a Python developer, a very well known Python developer called Raymond Hettinger, on the dicts in Python and how they are implemented. Uh, what does a dict basically do? If you try to search for a key, if the key is present, it will give you its value, and if the key is not present, it throws an error. But wouldn't it be nice that instead of throwing an error, it gives some default message as to what is a default message that will help you to say do further operations on it, and you don't have a bunch of try except blocks that handle not finding keys like that, right? So this is the place where the default dicts comes in. So it's a handy extension of the regular dict and returns a pre-specified value if a key is not found. So there are different ways in which default dict is initialized, and uh, there is one underlying principle is that while initializing a default dict, you have to pass in a callable. Now, what is a callable? Callable is a function which has a return value, or is an object where the double underscore call method has been defined. Such things are called callables, right? So basically think of it as a function or a lambda function. So let's go back to our interpreter and see how you can use a default dict. So let's again import from collections. Uh, so let's say that our dict is going to return an empty list as a default value if the key is not found. So I would just pass the list. Now see, list is a callable, right? So if you just do a list and call this, and gives you a blank list, right? So this is the same concept applied here. So you pass in a callable to the default dict, and now see, uh, the default dict is just like a dict and it has no elements in it right now. So I'm gonna put some elements, right? So say g is equal to say some list. It does not has to be a list, just like a normal dict is. So now if I try to access a of g, it gives back this thing, right? But if we try to access some other key which is not present in that list, say h, what it will give back is just empty list. And suppose you had a normal dict for that matter, say this was a dict, and you try to access that key h, that it has not been recorded there, it just gives an key error. And to avoid that, we usually what we used to do, we use some try catch block, or use d dot get if it is available. Let me see. Yeah, so we do a d get or just a blank list, like that thing, where a default dict has this thing built in, right? So uh, we can, if we give as a callable int, then the default value becomes 0, and let's say you want to give any other thing as a default value. Let's say the string abc. So that you can achieve by using a lambda function. So again, if you don't know lambda functions are just like normal functions, but these are one liner, typically anonymous functions that are used in place. So let's say uh, by it is declared by calling lambda. If you are to use some other, if are to use some parameters, you can pass them here. But here, but the callable that is expected to a default tick does not have a parameter, so we'll just use lambda. And now if I try to access some key that is not present, then it returns abc. Okay, so this is the default dict for you. So time for a practice problem. So you can search this problem in the internet, and so this is a problem from LeetCode called group the people given the group size they belong to. It's an interesting problem where you can effectively apply default dict. And let me know in the comments if you had figured out how to solve it. The next thing on one which we will be discussing is the counter. The counter is similar to default dict. It is a dictionary subclass, that's fine, and it has a default value of 0. And what it is really used for is it is used for counting purposes. So it is compared to multisets in C++stl, if you know it, or bags. They are also called bags. So they're typically used for word frequency or some list number frequency analysis. Very useful to use counter. So a counter initializing is of different styles. So counter, you can use a blank initialization of a counter. So it just creates a blank counter with nothing it has counted. You can also give it a dict that, and this dict represents that the entry 1 has appeared 5 times, the entry A has appeared 2 times, and this sets up the default counts for C3 here. Or you can just pass in as keyword arguments. You can you can pass in the list also, and it will count it up for you automatically. So let's, before going into the methods, let's show you the code how to do it. So we'll again import from collections, import counter. Let's do a blank initialization first. Okay, so it's a blank right now. Now let's put in some values, right? So like normal dicts, it accepts an update method, and in that update method you can just put in some arrays or lists, say 1 comma 2 comma 1 comma 4 comma 5. So what it's gonna do is it will count up the occurrences, and see, 1 appears 2 times, 2 appears once, 4 appears once, 5 appears once. In this way the counter counts it up. And let's say we want to access the count of 1, we'll just give it like that. And one of the most commonly used method for counters is most common, uh, and as the name suggests, it gives you back most common entries, pun intended obviously. So if you just do most common, it will give you back key value pairs. So just like The dictionary gives you back the a dot. If you do a dot items, it will give you back key value pairs. Like that, most common gives you back the key value pairs sorted as per the frequency. So these second elements are the frequencies, and the first elements are the keys. So let me actually insert some a huge value basically. Let's um, say I want to say that a has appeared 43 times, and now if I do most common, you see a appears 43 times, 1 appears twice, 2 appears once. And if you want to restrict, say I want to know the two most common uh, entries, then I just do a most common 2, and see it gives me back the most common entries. Say I want to know the highest occurring or the mode of the data basically, then it will give me back that. So most common is one of the option, one of the mostly commonly used methods for counter along with the update. And there are also methods in counter for addition, subtraction, union, and intersection of two counters, and I encourage you to look them up in the Python docs.python org web page. They really have very good documentation over here. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel.